Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
We're treating this as a domestic terrorist type incident, and therefore the FBI has the resources needed to help investigate that.
Massacre at a temple. 6 Sikh worshippers are killed in Wisconsin after a white gunman, possibly a white supremacist, opens fire in the deadliest attack on the Sikh community in recent memory.
Sad things happen, and it's unexpected. You know, we never ever think this thing's going to happen to our temple, because the people are go over there for pray, and we pray for everybody. But unfortunately, this happened. It's really sad.
We'll speak with Gurcharan Grewal of the Sikh Religious Society of Wisconsin, Rajdeep Singh of the Sikh Coalition in Washington, reporter John Nichols in Madison, Colin Goddard, survivor of the Virginia Tech massacre, and Democracy Now!'s Jessel Noor will rehair his report on post-9/11 hate crimes targeting sex.
You would expect to be called a terrorist. They would affiliate you with bin Laden. It made my education miserable, and I wouldn't focus in my education at all. I would just focus on, being safe and getting safe out of school and just get home.
All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. At least 7 people are dead following a shooting spree at a Sikh temple in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. The attack occurred Sunday morning when a gunman entered the Oak Creek Sikh temple, opening fire, killing at least 6 people, critically wounding 3 others before a police officer shot him dead. Authorities have not released the identity of the shooter, but it's been reported he's a white male who had previously been discharged from the Army. Oak Creek Police Chief John Edwards called the attack an act of domestic terrorism.
We're treating this as a domestic terrorist type incident, and therefore the FBI has the resources needed to help investigate that. The ATF is also involved with this, along with the Milwaukee Police Department is assisting us with the DA's office in the officer-involved shooting portion of this investigation.
The attack comes 2 weeks after the shooting massacre in Aurora, Colorado that left 12 people dead and 58 injured. We'll have more from Wisconsin after headlines. Violence continues to rage in Syria, where government forces and rebels are clashing in the 2 main fronts of Damascus and Aleppo. Earlier today, a bombing struck the headquarters of Syria's state broadcaster, injuring several people. The regime of Bashar al-Assad appears to be preparing a ground assault in Aleppo, with reports of some 20,000 troops surrounding the city. At the United Nations, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon expressed concern for Aleppo residents.
Aleppo, one of the most ancient and storied cities in the world, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, is the epicenter of a vicious battle between the Syrian government and those who wish to replace it. The acts of brutality that are being reported may constitute crimes against humanity or war crimes. Such acts must be investigated and the perpetrators held to account.
The Assad regime, meanwhile, has suffered another major defection. Earlier today, Syrian Prime Minister Riyad Farid Hijab announced he had fled to Jordan and joined Syria's opposition. Hijab was appointed Prime Minister of Syria in June in a bid by the Assad regime to claim it was enacting political reforms. Deadly violence erupted near Egypt's border with Israel Sunday when armed militants killed 16 Egyptian border guards. The militants were apparently attempting to cross from the Sinai into Israel and ambush the border guards as they ate a meal breaking the Ramadan fast. Israel says the militants were likely planning to capture Israeli soldiers on the other side of the border crossing. The Egyptian government says foreign fighters carried out the assault. Meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, at least 1 Palestinian was killed, another wounded in an Israeli airstrike Sunday. Both victims were apparently members of the Palestinian Popular Resistance Committees. The Palestinian Authority, meanwhile, was forced to cancel an international meeting Sunday after the Israeli government barred a number of diplomats from entering the West Bank. PA officials were due to meet with envoys from the Global Non-Aligned Movement to discuss plans to revive the Palestinian statehood bid at the United Nations nations next month. But the Israeli government said it would only allow delegates from countries with which it has diplomatic relations, barring 4 attendees and leading the others to cancel their trip in solidarity. At least 45 people have been killed in a suicide bombing in southern Yemen. The attack targeted a funeral service attended by members of a militia that aided a government offensive against al-Qaeda in June. At least 40 people were arrested in Bahrain on Friday in a government crackdown on a pro-democracy rally. Bahraini forces fired tear gas and birdshot to disperse the crowd, wounding at least 45 people. Among those detained was pro-democracy activist Zined al-Khawaja, the daughter of Abdul Hadi al-Khawaja, who ended a more than 3-month hunger strike in May. Bahrain is a key U.S. government ally, hosting the Navy's 5th Fleet. Japan is commemorating the 67th anniversary of the U.S. bombing of Hiroshima today amidst mounting protest over the country's nuclear woes. The acute effects of the 1945 Hiroshima bombing eventually killed an estimated 166,000 people. Japan, meanwhile, has seen record numbers take to the streets in recent months to demand an end to nuclear power, more than a year after the Fukushima nuclear disaster. At a ceremony marking the anniversary, Hiroshima Mayor Kazumi Matsui linked Fukushima to the Hiroshima bombing.
With
the cataclysmic disaster at the nuclear plant, it has become very difficult for humanity to forget. Even now, those trying to live with the aftermath of the disaster, their experiences overlap with those who experienced that day 67 years ago.
Celebrations are held in Jamaica and around the world today, honoring the country's 50th anniversary of independence. On August 6, 1962, Jamaica became a free nation after more than 300 years of British rule. Jamaica celebrating the day with national festivities, as are members of the Jamaican diaspora across the globe. A new study from one of the nation's leading climate scientists concludes that the recent spate of extreme weather seen in the United States and around the world cannot be attributed to anything but human-caused global warming. The study concludes the odds of extreme temperature occurrences have grown from 1 in 300 through the 80s to 1 in 10 today. The study was led by James Hansen, the head of NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies. Over the weekend, Hansen discussed his findings with PBS News.
What we show is that there is a connection to these extreme weather events that we've been seeing. The probability of these unusually hot spells, forest fires, and extreme droughts has increased substantially over the last few decades.
More than 3,100 daily heat records were set in the U.S. last month, a rate of over 100 per day. In an article previewing his study, Hansen writes, quote, "It's no longer enough to say global warming will increase the likelihood of extreme weather and to repeat the caveat that no individual weather event can be directly linked to climate change. To the contrary, our analysis shows that for the extreme hot weather of the recent past, there's virtually no explanation other than climate change." Firefighters continue to battle 18 wildfires in Oklahoma amidst the widespread drought covering most of the United States. The current heat wave in Oklahoma has brought the state its highest temperature since the Dust Bowl of 1936. Oklahoma City set an all-time record on Friday with a high of 113 degrees. New figures show the official U.S. unemployment rose to 8.3% in July, up from 8.2% the month before. Despite the slide, non-farm jobs saw an increase of 172,000, ending a 3-month run below 100,000. At the White House, President Obama welcomed the newly created jobs and said Republican policies would only further weaken continued growth.
We've now created 4.5 million new jobs over the last 29 months. And 1.1 million new jobs so far this year. Those are our neighbors and family members finding work and the security that comes with work. But let's acknowledge, we've still got too many folks out there who are looking for work. We've got more work to do on their behalf. The last thing that we should be doing is asking middle-class families who are still struggling to recover from this recession to pay more in taxes.
Republican challenger Mitt Romney, meanwhile, seized on the unemployment news, saying President Obama's policies have failed. Romney spoke during a campaign event in Las Vegas.
The official unemployment number, 8.3%. That's the longest period of time, 42 months, the longest period of time we've had unemployment above 8% in American history since this has been recorded. This is an extraordinary record of failure. The president's policies have not worked because he thinks government makes America work. He's wrong.
The suspect in last year's Tucson, Arizona shooting spree is expected to plead guilty Tuesday. Jared Loughner is charged with the killing of 6 people and wounding of several others, including former Democratic Congressmember Gabrielle Giffords. Loughner was initially declared unfit to stand trial after undergoing psychiatric evaluation. He's currently being treated for mental illness at a psychiatric facility in Missouri. Protesters continued to target the fast food chain Chick-fil-A after its founder openly declared his opposition to equal rights for LGBT people. In recent weeks, Chick-fil-A President Dan Cathy has acknowledged funding anti-LGBT groups and has denounced same-sex marriage. On Friday, activists across the nation held a national kiss-in outside of Chick-fil-A locations.
He's promoting hatred. He's promoting that people still have to be in the closet, not live the lives that they were born to be, and promotes suicide, promotes bullying, promotes every of the bad stuff, and that's why I'm okay with someone exercising their First Amendment right, but not if it's like a hatred against someone else.
A NASA science rover has landed safely on Mars after an 8-month journey. The rover Curiosity had traveled more than 350 million miles as part of an eventual 2-year mission. White House science advisor John Holdren praised the landing.
Landing the Mars Science Laboratory rover Curiosity on the surface of the red planet was, by any measure, the most challenging mission ever attempted in the history of robotic planetary exploration. And if anybody has been harboring doubts about the status of U.S. leadership in space, well, there's a 1-ton automobile-sized piece of American ingenuity on the and it's sitting on the surface of Mars right now, and it should certainly put any such doubts to rest.
And the Mexican singer Chavela Vargas has died at the age of 93. Vargas was a legend in Mexico, defying gender stereotypes in her music before coming out as a lesbian at the age of 81. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report.